Hi guys, welcome to my channel, and how are y'all doing today? So here on Abby the Witch, we talk all things witchcraft. If that is something that you can vibe with, you can go ahead and hit subscribe. You can also follow me on other platforms such as Instagram and Patreon, Abby the Witch, just like it is here. So here today on Abby the Witch, we are actually going to be discussing Covenry, my personal experience with group work, working with other covens, being in covens. And I actually got this idea from Jasmine Ambrosia. She is a dear friend of mine and also a high priestess of a coven. So she actually gave me this list of questions to cover on this video. I loved this idea to do a video on this topic, and I love the questions that she gave me so much. I decided to go ahead and just answer these questions she gave me on this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and I'll answer these questions. So the first question is, I have them on my phone, so if I'm looking down, that's why. The first question is, how to find a coven, how you met SCC, which is her coven, Solar Court Coven. So I actually met, it's so funny because I found out about SCC through Jasmine, and I met Jasmine online via YouTube, and it was actually on her channel. I had subscribed to her long before this, but she was doing a live stream and she said something about Indiana, and I was like, what? Like, I live in Indiana. So I was like in the chat like, girl, I was like, where at in Indiana? Like, hello, I live here too. And she was like, what? She was like, where do you live in Indiana? And I said, I'm not gonna say on here, but I said where I live. And she was like, I live there too. I was like, what? We didn't even know that we both lived in Indiana. It was crazy. But so we, started DMing each other and got to know each other, and then we met up in person, and we've become friends ever since. So that's how I got to know her and her coven. And that's how I started hanging out with her and her coven. So yeah. And that's what I would say, honestly. If you want to get to know a coven or find a coven, go online. Go online. Do research online. There's a lot of covens will have information online. Some covens probably won't, but I mean, it's 2024. That's how you can find a coven. Go online. A lot of covens even have their own like Facebook page, or I don't think SCC does, at least not yet. If they are going to, I don't know. But I know some other covens have their own Facebook page, their own Instagram page. You might even check out YouTube, high priest, high priestess of a coven. Click that in, type that in. You might find someone like I did on YouTube. So yeah, go online. That's what I would say. Or you can even ask your spirit guides, your deities you work with or worship, to try to like make that happen for you. That might help you out too. So question number 2 is, your experience first attending a Sabbath. What did you expect? How did you prepare? How did your experience compare to what you expected? Interesting. Okay, so my first experience attending a Sabbath was was it the spring one? Yeah, Ostera was my first one. I prepared by spending some time at my altar, just like a normal day, spending some time at my altar, cleansing myself, grounding myself. I'm not gonna lie, I was definitely nervous. I had never been to another coven's ritual ceremony before. I had never done this before. I had never really even worked with a group of witches before. Like when it comes to doing magic or ritual, I had never done that before. So I was nervous, you know? So I definitely spent some time at my altar, cleansing, grounding, centering myself, calming my nerves. I definitely had some certain items on that might help me like boost my confidence, right? Make me feel not as nervous. So that's what I did to prepare. I just did some magic. I did witchcraft. I prepared myself magically, spiritually. It definitely was a little different than what I expected, in the sense that it was still extremely powerful. It was still very ritualistic, right? But they also have fun. Like they also have fun, okay? And one of these questions actually is, what is red flags? If the coven ain't having fun, then what are they even doing, okay? You gotta have fun too. You gotta enjoy yourself. What's the point of performing ritual? What's the point of being with other witches? What's the point of doing magic at all if it's not also fun? Sure, it's powerful, it's serious, it's maybe your religion, I don't know. But like you gotta have fun with it too. And it was fun. It was super fun. I was like surprised. I made friends, and I guess I was expecting it to be all serious, you know? But it wasn't. It was serious, but it was also fun, right? We laughed. It was fun. So that was a little different than what I expected, and it was a nice surprise. It was nice. It helped me calm my nerves. It helped me relax. Question number 3 is, how do you feel in group work? So for the record, and I should have said this in the beginning, I am not initiated. It probably was implied, but I am not initiated into SCC. I am not a Coven sibling or a Coven member. I have not been initiated, but I'm welcome into the space for most Sabbats. Some Coven gatherings are closed, right? Some of them are open to friends that are invited, and some of them are even open to the public. That's more like, I've been to an open public one before, and that was more like a, what do they call it? A mixer, like a social mixer. But anyway, I, as a friend of the Coven, am invited to Sabbats, and I will say that how I feel in the group ritual work, I definitely have gotten like goosebumps before. Like it's definitely a different experience. Is it more powerful than solitary work? No, not necessarily, no. But it's definitely, there is something about being with other witches in the fucking woods and doing magic that makes you feel, I feel like it charges me. That's a good way to explain it. I feel like group work, being with other witches, doing ritual in a group, makes me feel charged, which is saying something, because I am really introverted, honestly. Like going out, that's one reason I was so nervous to do group work and to go out and do ritual with other witches, because like I am so introverted. And usually being with other people does the opposite. It drains me. And I don't do it very often because of that. But doing ritual, this is more than just socializing, right? This is doing ritual. This is doing witchcraft. This is doing magic with other witches. Not only does it charge me, but it charges my magic. I come back home as a solitary witch, and I feel like my magic has grown because of it, or at least charged. Not that I couldn't do that on my own, but it's definitely something that helps, you know? Okay, number 4. Oh, I think this is a typo. I think she's saying, how has your experience been in Coven spaces? Okay, how has my experience been? in coven spaces, like before hanging out with SEC, not great. Well, okay. So a long time ago, if you've been following me for a while, you probably remember an old friend of mine. I've deleted some videos of her since because we're not friends anymore. But we started a coven together, and we were going to recruit people and make like this coven. We established a coven. We even did a ritual creating this coven. Yeah. So that's another kind of like thing that you should have a heads up about, is you may or may not vibe with everyone in your coven. Being in a coven might not be a permanent thing. And that's okay. There might be rules to follow on how you step out of a coven, but as long as you follow those rules, it's fine. Stuff happens, right? My personal experience with a coven falling apart or someone stepping out of the coven was not so neutral, pleasant, not a big deal. It was actually kind of a big deal. There's a whole lot of drama with that. I had a super traumatic experience and this person stepped away for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't really want to dive too much into that just because like, I just don't want to. Yeah, we were witch siblings. We were coven siblings. And she stepped away without saying anything. That is one thing I will say. If you are part of a coven, please just fucking communicate if you want out. It's not a big deal. Just, it's okay. And that's another red flag too. Well, I'll save that. I'll save that for that question. But if you want out of that coven, just have a conversation with your coven members. Have a conversation with the high priest or priestess. Just have a conversation, okay? Let them know, hey, this isn't the right time for me. No hard feelings. I want out, okay? That's it. And sometimes it's not even just one member. Sometimes, like in my personal experience, it's the whole fucking coven falls apart. And that's okay. Friends drift apart. Sometimes covens just no longer exist, and that's fine. I cut that cord. That coven is no longer a thing. That friendship is no longer a thing. It's long gone, okay? So even if it is like a bad falling out, like you just cut that cord and move on. Yeah, so that's been my experience. Number 5 is describe the difference between solitary work and group work. I mean, I've kind of already touched on this. I would definitely say, you know, like I said, that group work, group ritual can be very charging. All of that energy coming from all of those witches coming together, it can be very intense. Like I said, my magic and I can feel very charged, but I can also feel so charged that when I get home, I kind of just want to like sit on the couch, you know? Because it is so intense. But I will say that like items that I have when I go into group ritual, those feel like energetically very charged. Also, like I can use tools I brought into ritual for my solitary practice. Now in my solitary practice, I can do that. I can charge items, but I obviously have to do it in a different way. I feel like solitary practice also, here's another big difference. I feel connected in group ritual to spirit, the devil, the goddess. Sure, absolutely. However, I feel more connected with the people around me, with the other witches around me in group ritual. Whereas in solitary work, it's just me and the devil, or me and the goddess, and my craft, obviously. But that's kind of hand in hand. I feel like the goddess and the devil are my craft. That's kind of like hard to explain. But anyway, that's the biggest difference, I feel like. In group work, I feel more connected with the witches around me. In solitary practice, in solitary work, I feel more connected with spirit. Number 6, witch cords, petitioning, initiation, courting season, altar setup. These could all be cool talking points. So Jasmine's coven is an American traditional witchcraft based coven, okay? So in American traditional witchcraft, there are cords. There are gray cords or green cords. It can be either or. I know some traditions in America use green. Her coven uses gray, and that's like a friend of the coven, right? It's not an initiate. It's just a friend, or like what we call them, Coven Cousins. It's not a coven sibling, it's a Coven Cousin, okay? And then they also have other colors, and I feel really bad because I'm blanking on what the other colors are, but there's other colors telling other members of the coven where you are ranked, okay? The symbolism behind these cords is that you're connected, right? That you're all connected as members or as friends, as Coven Cousins. You're all in some way connected through these cords, okay? We do believe that these cords hold magic, and kind of like what I was saying with items that I bring to the ritual, they kind of soak up any magic. And you can also use them in your solitary work for magic as well. So you're kind of feeding magic into these cords. And altar setup, yeah, I put my cord, I'll just say it, whatever. I am a gray cord. That's probably obvious. But being a Coven Cousin or a Coven friend, I took a gray cord, just kind of like symbolically representing me as a Coven Cousin or a Coven friend. It's not like I had to take one, but I wanted to. And it's a tool. It's a tool. It can be something that fuels my magic. I can bring it to ritual, and the magic from the ritual gets soaked into the cord, and I can use the magic that's already in the cord for the ritual, blah, blah, blah. You guys get it. It's on my altar, courting season. So there are like different, I'm not sure if it's like this in all traditional witchcraft-based covens, or if like courting season is a different season for different covens. I'm not really sure, but I know in SEC, in this specific coven, that they have specific seasons where you can kind of try out for being an initiate, to become an initiate, okay? They don't accept everyone into the coven, so you do have to try out. It does take a little while to be like officially initiated if you do get initiated, okay? So like in my instance, by taking a gray cord, that is the first step to be initiated. If I ever wanted to be initiated, I feel nice and cozy being a Coven Cousin and not being an initiate, because it's less pressure. I don't have to go to every Sabbat or every Esbat or every single thing. I just don't have time to do that right now in my life. And they totally understand that and respect that, but they wanted to recognize me as a Coven friend. So yeah, that's why I took the gray cord. But I could potentially take the next steps if I ever wanted to in the future. Get another cord or become an initiate if I wanted to. All right, I had to stop because my camera was overheating, and then I had some lunch. Now I'm back. My hair looks a little different. Whatever. Okay. Question number 7. What advice would you give another witch contemplating on attending a ritual? Be open-minded, you know? I would definitely say just fucking do it. Just go. If anything, it can just be an experience, right? And you're never gonna know how you feel about covenry, ritual work in a group setting. You're never gonna know how you feel about that until you actually go and experience it. So I would definitely say just be open-minded and go try it. Don't feel like going to this one gathering means that you're obligated to go to more. Just go for the experience. And if you feel nervous about doing that and then still feeling pressure to go to more, just be upfront about it before you go. Just be like, hey, just so you know, like, I don't really know how I feel about covens. I don't really know how I feel about group work. So I'm just going for the experience for now, and maybe I'll love it. I'm not really sure. You know, and if they're like a really cool coven and they're understanding, like they'll understand that, you know? Question number 8. What red flags would you suggest someone watch out for? With this, what green flags would be a good sign of a healthy working group? Ooh, yeah, okay. So I already kind of touched on the red flags a little bit, but I'll go ahead and just like put them all together in this answer, this response. You definitely, okay, if you ever decide to be a part of a coven and you are initiated, right? And then later down the line, you decide this is not for me, or this is not a good time in my life anymore. I can no longer commit to this. A good coven is going to allow you to leave, okay? Now, again, you should do it respectfully, okay? Communicate with them. Don't fucking ghost the coven. That's not cool. And someone might get real salty over that. You know, don't piss off a witch. We all know that. But you should be allowed to leave a coven whenever you want. That's the difference between, that's one of the many differences between a coven and a fucking cult, okay? If you are trapped inside of a coven, that's not a coven, in my opinion, okay? You should be allowed to leave whenever you want, okay? Just make sure that you communicate that you are leaving, all due respect, do it respectfully, blah, blah, blah. That's a red flag. If someone says, no, you are made a commitment, you can't leave, no, not cool. If they pressure you to do skyclad, that's another red flag. I definitely know that I've heard of some covens that even not only just skyclad, not that skyclad has to be sexual, but pushing it even further, I've heard of some covens pressuring other coven members to do like orgy settings, having sex with other coven members for sex magic and things like that. Or to be initiated into this coven, you have to XYZ, like have sex with this person or whatever. That's a red flag. You shouldn't have to do any sort of sexual activity. That's sexual coercion, and that's a little sexual assaulty, you know? You don't ever have to do anything like that to make you like a legit coven member or anything like that. That's a huge red flag. Run for the hills. Oh yeah, and going back to the skyclad thing, like even just like saying you have to perform ritual naked with us, that's not cute either. Like that's a red flag. That should be an option. If you want to show up, if you want to do this skyclad, aka naked, then go for it. If not, then whatever. It shouldn't be forced. Being naked should not be forced. Unfortunately, within the occult space, there are some not cool groups that might circle around things like Nazism, white supremacy, racism, other forms of bigotry and oppression. Obviously that's a red flag. I mean, I should hope it's a red flag to you. If you like smell any of that going on, don't even give them a chance. That's a red flag. I would just get the hell out of there. Like just because your ancestry is white doesn't mean that your spiritual practice needs to be closed off to people who are not white. That's white supremacy. That's a huge red flag, and that's again, unfortunately, a thing that goes on in the occult community, pagan space, I really should say. One last red flag I would say too is people who are maybe stick their noses up to your spiritual beliefs, to your personal gnosis, okay? If you come into a space, I mean, obviously, like if you're a Satanist going into like some sort of like love and light coven or something like that, there might be some conflicting ideals, but for the most part, you should really be looking for, but for the most part, if someone's like, ew, no, your personal gnosis is all wrong, what you believe isn't true, blah, 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 I feel like that's a red flag. I really want to be looking for open-mindedness. And that leads me into the green flags that you should look for when entering a coven space. And one of those is open-mindedness. They are curious about your beliefs and open to it. They don't shun your beliefs, again, unless it's like something like white supremacy or something like that. But when it comes to like your personal nous, your spirituality, for the most part, they should be willing to listen and be open to it and not judge you for it, you know? Also, another green flag would be, does your coven have some different types of people in it? Does it have different sexualities, different gender identities, maybe different skin tones? It's not always a red flag, if not, but it could just be like a coincidence. But, you know, just kind of feel it out. Like, is this kind of like looking a little too like closed practice, quote unquote, you know what I mean? Green flags, green flags. I mean, it's basically just the opposite of all my red flags. Like, just make sure that they are open to you coming and going. You know, especially if you're not an initiate and they're not pressuring you to be an initiate. That's definitely a green flag, I would say. No pressure. Not forcing you to do anything that you don't want to do. They always give you options of how you can show up, what you need to do. If you don't feel comfortable with something, that's okay. You should be looking for that, for sure. So the biggest green flag is just overall, just make sure you feel comfortable, okay? Make sure you feel comfortable. You don't feel pressure to do anything. You don't feel like cornered or anything like that, okay? Because you don't want that. Number 9, how has this experience changed opinions or perspectives you had previously? So kind of like tapping on what I said earlier, like I said, I am pretty introverted. So the idea of coven work, previous to any coven experience that I've had, really gave me like, no, like I did not even want to touch it. Because I thought of it as just like socializing. And it is socializing. Obviously, you're with other people and you're working with other people. But it's so much more than that, okay? As a witch interacting with other witches, it's not like you're going to just like small talk, you know? Like, you're doing work together. You're doing workings together. You're doing magic. You're doing ritual, okay? So it's not like I didn't know that before, but it's just like, it feels different than just socializing, you know? So I feel like now that I know that, I'm much more open to continuing my coven experience because I know what it can do for me and my magic. And plus the coven I hang out with, I've become friends with. But on top of that, I know what it can do for me and my magic. And number 10 is, the final question is, any closing thoughts? Don't ever feel like you have to be a part of a coven. Don't ever feel like you have to start your own coven to be a legitimate, valid witch. You do not. Solitary work is just as valid, is just as powerful, is just as amazing. It makes you just as legit of a witch as someone who's part of a coven. I'm sorry, I just had spicy pasta, so my nose is sniffly. Like I was saying earlier though, if you get invited to a ritual or a group setting of witches doing a working, just be open-minded to it. Just go try it out. And, maybe communicate ahead of time that this might just be a one-time thing, but just go do it and just experience it and see how you feel. Because like I said, I didn't think I would like it. My perspective on group work is different now. So just give it a shot, but don't feel like you have to do it. Like, permanently. Like you have to be a part of a coven or anything like that. Don't feel rushed to do it either. That's definitely a thing. I feel like in the beginning when I was like starting out as a witch, I had to do this or I had to do that like right away, you know, to be taken seriously as a witch. And like, that's silly. If you don't feel like you have a solid foundation to your spiritual practice, to your witchcraft, and you go into a group setting, you might feel a little uncomfortable. I would say maybe work on that first. Have a little bit of experience as a solitary practitioner first, and then go into a group setting. I don't know. I mean, that's just me. Maybe you're super extroverted and like you don't get nervous around people and what they think of you and you just like throw yourself into the flames. That's cool too. But if you're anything like me, maybe like feel comfortable with your foundation of your practice first. And then you might feel a little more comfortable going into a group setting. I think the last thing I really want to say is a thank you to SCC. Thank you Solar Court Coven. Thank you Jasmine. And thank you Coven members for welcoming me with open arms. Thank you so much. You guys have been lovely. You guys have become wonderful friends of mine. And I just, that's what coven and group work should be. You should feel comfortable walking into a space and being yourself and with your own spiritual beliefs and feeling welcome, you know? I want to thank you guys for that. Anyway, guys, that's all I have today for this video on Covenry. If you have any questions about my personal experience, leave them down below. I would love to talk and answer any questions you might have. And until next time, guys, I hope you stay very well and don't forget to follow the snake. Bye. Scoot over a little bit. Does this look okay? Is this acceptable, guys? So that's the chords, and that's what the chord mean. And the symbol,